Hey everyone, the DPS meter video and Reddit thread caused a ton of controversy, as I kind of expected, to the point where we actually got Ana to comment on it. Their stated position is that they don't want to dedicate resources to maintaining a DPS meter in the live game, but they do understand that people on both sides of the issue are passionate. So, being constructive, where do we go from here? If we assume it's a given that ANET will never release a first-party DPS meter, what can we do? Well, there are some things that would cost very little resources for ANET to do that would be big helps at solving some of the issues that we would use a DPS meter to solve. The first thing ANET could easily do is improve the golem in the Special Forces area, specifically a few minor changes. Primarily, we need an option for a 30 or 40 million HP golem. The 10 million HP golem, which is the current biggest golem, dies too quickly in order to test 10-player raid groups. Being able to test two different 10-man compositions in terms of golem kill time would be helpful in assessing the value of traits like Assassin's Presence, for example. Since most raid bosses have over 25 million HP, the DPS golem should be configurable to have at least that much. The next thing the golem needs is for the AoE ambient damage pulse that it makes to be higher and more damaging. Currently, the pulse is too weak to stress a healer's abilities, and this causes a problem with the druid. In real raids, a good druid separates himself from a bad druid based on how many stacks of Grace of the Land he generates, and how much DPS he can get in while doing it. For example, a skilled Berserker Druid should average around 3 stacks maintained on his group for the whole fight, and he will be able to also get in a good amount of personal DPS while doing that. A bad Berserker Druid might actually be one who makes more personal DPS but less Grace, or makes more Grace because he camps CA too long and doesn't do enough personal DPS. Currently, these two things are impossible to practice on the Golem, as the passive damage tick from the Special Forces Golem is too weak to allow for Celestial Avatar to be refilled as quickly as it would be in a raid setting. So we should be able to select an amount of passive damage from the options menu to create a more accurate customized test bed for healers. So while there are several things that could be improved at the Golem, these are the two easiest and effective things that we could have, and would likely take very little developer time investment to create, since apparently ANET has decided that this is a resource worth investing developer time into, so hopefully they do. The second change is something that the API team would have to implement. Essentially, we need an API that will export our chat log to a text file. This would allow the community to create themselves a 100% legal and 100% accurate personal DPS meter. But that would only be the beginning. It would allow you to link your API code to a website like Guild Wars 2 Efficiency, and they could create DPS parse logs so that you could easily share your output with the community and your rank within the community if you so choose. Parse logs, while not as immediately useful for groups as a real-time DPS and buff meter, would still be quite an invaluable tool for the community. The best part is it would require almost no work from ANET upon creating the API. Exporting your chat log isn't a huge project relative to some of the other API initiatives, and it would bring out a lot of neat applications other than to do with DPS. There would be many other uses for this in the community that have nothing to do with DPS, and it would be great. This is honestly the best of all worlds solution. It's minimal work for ANET. It is not an official first-party DPS meter. Anything that we develop with it would be legal for the community to use and be official, and since it requires the API key, it would be entirely voluntary with your data being shared. While this wouldn't, of course, solve all the issues that a real-time DPS/buff/healing/damage taken meter would solve, it would solve some of them, and potentially answer a few other issues that a real-time meter might not. It would be a hugely positive step in the right direction. So those are the two big but easy things that can and should definitely happen to please the community of players who are actively seeking a more analytical approach to their gameplay. Lastly, one final thing I want to say before I move on from this topic is that third-party memory reading DPS meters are out there in the wild. ANET doesn't appear to be banning people for using them yet. Most likely it's because it doesn't actually harm the economy or impact player experience directly. Being that there's a never-ending scourge of botters, gold sellers, World v World, and PvP hackers to deal with, it seems likely that a dude running a gear checker for his Gorseval Pug is low on the list, assuming he isn't obnoxious about it. What this means is that all the supposed negativity that some people assume a DPS meter or gear checker would add to the game is already in the game, and the presence of these applications is likely to get more common as time goes on. People should bear in mind that when they express their fear that such and such will happen if meters are introduced, that meters are already introduced, and their fears haven't materialized yet. An ancient Greek philosopher said the following quote that I think is appropriate here. "Today is the tomorrow that you feared yesterday."